What's up YouTube, Capital G here. Going to show you guys the deck that I've been using pretty much for this entire format. And if you've seen me on Dueling Network, this is the deck that I would say 90% of the time you've watched me play with. People asked me if I was going to post this or if I would post it for them. And you know what? I just figured that I might as well go ahead. I've got a regional in about 2 weeks in Greensboro, North Carolina. But yeah, to go ahead and show you guys the deck. 3 Archfiend, 3 Necromancer, 2 Mirage, 2 Tour Guides from the Underworld, 1 Avenger, 1 Beetle, and 1 Dark Grepher, the 1-ofs. For the spells, we have 3 Gold Sarcophagus, 2 Mystical Space Typhoon, and then a whole bunch of 1-ofs. Heavy Storm, Book of Moon, Foolish Burial, Dark Hole, Allure of Darkness, 1-for-1 Monster Born, and then the ever so important Infernity Launcher. Not a whole lot of spells there, but the most important spell, Launcher, is searchable, so it really doesn't matter that much. 3 copies of Infernity Inferno because you got to be able to get the Infernities into the graveyard. 3 Barriers, best card in the deck. 2 Call to Haunted, pretty glad this went to 2. 2 Solemn Warnings, and then they're 1-ofs. We've got Torrential Tribute, Trap Dust Shoot, Solemn Judgment, and Infernity Break. I like Trap Dust Shoot in here because a lot of situations you'll pick that one good card out of their opening hand, and it can basically give you 2 more turns, which in Infernity is basically a lifetime, especially considering I'm playing 2 Gold Sarcophagus. It can hit that Maxi or that Baylor and just let me win. So, and then to the extra deck, we've got the 1 Random Armory Arm at the top here. The most important card in the extra deck, 3 copies of 100 Dragon. Then we've got our big level 8s and 9s. Stardust, Trishula, and Infernity Doom Dragon. Infernity Doom Dragon is so freaking underrated. There are so many times where I will bring this guy out to blow up people's face downs, or I'm about to lock out a game, and he's just a really, really good card. We have our mid-class beaters, Black Rose, Baronic, Catastor, and Stygian. And then our Xyz. We only run level 3s, or excuse me, rank 3s. 2 Levier and 2 Leviathan. I think this is only 14. Basically, for the 15th card, you can just throw in whatever the hell you want because you're never going to use it. Roach, Utopia, whatever. Your chances are you're not going to use it. One of the main reasons why I'm really liking this deck right now is because of Tour Guide from the Underworld. I think she is a huge addition to this deck. It lets you get your Necromancer straight from the deck. You're always going to summon it in defense mode. Except, actually, there's been a couple of times where I've had Barrier set and I put her in attack mode specifically so that I can go off using, like, Launcher or Monster Reborn or something like that. It gives this deck a lot more opening plays, like a lot better opening plays. In many situations, if your opponent, just sets a monster and says go, then you can go Tour Guide, get your Necromancer. You have a 2,000 wall. Let's say you attack into a Raikou. You already went plus because if they kill your Necromancer, then you got Necromancer. You basically got a Foolish Burial for Necromancer, and you still have Tour Guide on the field. Or if they kill Tour Guide, you still have a 2,000 wall on the field, which is, I mean, either way, it's going to be a good situation. The 2 Xyz definitely help the deck, most notably because of Tour Guide again. Levier, I mean, you've pretty much seen the loops now. Everybody should know about the loop where if you have Infernity Mirage on the field plus Necromancer, Archfiend, and Avenger, you can basically OTK your opponent, and you can Trish them twice, and you end up ultimately with Baronic, Trishula, and Doom Dragon, which is exactly 8,000 damage. And for the most part, outside of maybe Junk Doppel, when Infernity goes off, it's probably the most potent deck in all of Yu-Gi-Oh! In the TCG anyway. If your opponent doesn't have a Veiler or a Maxi, or they don't counter it, you're going to win 90% of the time, because when you start doing loops with 100 Dragon and you start stacking multiple barriers, add in an Infernity Break, and you have multiple synchros, there just isn't much that your opponent can do. And you're almost always going to have more cards than them. But in addition, you basically have free Solemn Judgments, and then you have this, which is basically like Book of Moon and Smashing Ground on crack. Like Book of Moon and Smashing Ground had some sort of ridiculous baby, and then like throw MST in there. One of the problems that this deck really has is with 2 cards. Well, excuse me, that should be different. Thunder King Ryo, and unfortunately Thunder King Ryo is starting to see playing everything, and hand traps. Hand traps are a much bigger problem than Thunder King Ryo in my opinion. I actually haven't ran into Ryo that much. I mean, you have main deck answers for Ryo. You've got Book of Moon, Darkhold, Torrential Tribute, Warning. You can use Infernity Break on Ryo. Ryo isn't a card that will hold the deck down for long. The bigger problem for this deck is hand traps. I'm talking about Effect Veiler and Max C, especially Max C. Effect Veiler is honestly, if you're playing a slow tempo game, it's not hard to bait out Effect Veiler, because what you'll essentially do is, instead of trying to go off with just like a launcher, what I'll usually do is I'll try and get like 2 Archfiends in my graveyard, and then I'll try and go off, so that I'll activate like launcher and I'll target a Archfiend and a Necromancer. And if you Veiler the Archfiend, then I can just go Necromancer, you know, get what's it called? I can go Necromancer, get my second Archfiend, get Mirage, and then you've basically lost if I have a tuner in the graveyard. That's 90% chance you've lost the game because you Veilered and I still had another card. Max C, on the other hand, is a bitch to play around, because when you try and explode and your opponent goes Max C, you immediately have to change your entire game plan. You no longer can do your big ass loops using multiple 100 eyes and mirages, or using combos like removing your mirages with 100 eyes, then summoning Tour Guide, making Levier, and bringing back the mirages. You can't do any of those plays. A lot of times you have to go defensive, and you have to start getting things like, on your Archfiend search, you have to start getting things like Break and Barrier, so that you can attempt to explode next turn, but that you can live through that turn because your explode just didn't happen. In fact, the hand traps are so prevalent right now with you know, Billy Break playing 3 Max Cs and a Veiler, and a lot of players still playing 2 Veilers, that I've even considered main decking Debunk, because when you look at the fact that it takes out cards to activate in the graveyard like Tengu and Sangan, I mean, Debunk is a card that in most main decks is gonna get some type of use right now. I still think that this deck is very viable. I think that, and I've tested it against a multitude of decks. Its worst matchup is probably Plant Synchro, which unfortunately is the best deck right now. I played this deck against Dark World. Unless they really outplus you within the first couple of turns, Dark World doesn't play hand traps, so you basically just shit on them by about turn 2 or 3 if they haven't like completely killed you. It has pretty good matchup versus agents. As long as you can keep Chrissy off the field, you win. The more time you give Infernity, to set up, the more likely it is that they'll win, because they'll put you in a situation where they try and explode, you try and counter, and chances are you've given them more time to get a Barrier or a Solemn Judgment or something like that. You know what I mean? This deck has more counter traps than you, or it has more counters than you do. You just have to make sure that you hit your counters first when Infernity try and go off. So let me know what you guys think. If you think that I should play this deck at regionals, and of course, thanks for watching.